All right. Morning, Eric. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Good, good. Well, thanks for joining me today. This is another installment in our series of episodes that we're doing, looking at speed testing and other tests that we can do, or that folks can do on their websites to
Mhm.
do some optimizations. Now that websites are, in particular, e-commerce sites are going to be carrying so much of the water for a lot of people's business with the current circumstances around COVID. So with that in mind, Eric.
First of all, I'm a project manager and lead developer here at Earthling, and I build e-commerce sites. And what we're going to look at is my own personal email or e-commerce site because I write and publish climbing guidebooks, rock climbing and ice
Cool.
climbing guidebooks. Here's one of them. This is for an area in Mexico, El Potrero
Oh,
Chico. So this is a pretty typical e-commerce site. It's just got, categories and products, and there's the book we're looking at.
oh, okay.
Product page, shopping cart, all the usual stuff. Checkout with PayPal. Um, so what we're going to do is run a couple tools on this site, analysis tools, to see just how bad it is.
Oh, well.
It's not too bad, but
And
it,
what are we
it definitely.
analyzing? How bad it is in what
Um,
term?
well, we're going to run page speed tests
Okay.
and GT metrics analyzers. So the first is Google PageSpeed, which is a suite of tests that Google has put together, and I think they factor this into their rankings for how they return search results. Actually, I know they do.
Oh, okay.
From,
So
from
it's important not just for user experience, but also for SEO or for
oh yeah,
ranking.
absolutely. That's the number one reason because one of Google's most important rules they think is a site has to load fast or users will just go away. If you're
Okay.
sitting on a website and waiting even 4 or 5 seconds, they think that's too long. So
Okay.
their
So
metric is about 3 seconds to load a page.
okay. And Google looks at that first as they consider where you are in your rankings.
It's one of the factors. One of the curious things about Google is you can't really get any direct uh, direction from them about exactly what they rank first or
Okay.
second or third. But
Okay.
over the years, people have discovered some of the clues and tricks to make things
Okay.
show up higher in search results. So
Okay.
that thing's running. So that's one tool. We'll let it run for a little bit.
Okay.
The next one is GT Metrics,
And
which
can
is
anybody get on this, or is
yep.
GT Metrics a okay?
This is a publicly available site. It's a
Okay.
free tool. So it will, if you just pop in your URL here and click test your site, it will go through and do its little robot scan thing here, and it will return with a report. While we're looking at that, I can show you result of a site that we already worked on, if I can get to it. Okay. Here's a site that we did some work on, and it was a failing grade before. It was an F. But we did some work on the site. Didn't take too long to do what we did. But this customer site, so we got the grade raised, and this is what it does. GT Metrics returns a grade, and it analyzes a whole bunch of stuff, hundreds and hundreds of factors. It runs a number of suites of tests, and what we're seeing here is that, well, you didn't see what we started with, but we started with an F, which is kind of typical for e-commerce sites, surprisingly, because there's so much going on with e-commerce sites.
Sure.
Um, we got it up to a grade C in our first stab, and there are still some fairly low-hanging fruit that we can do to improve that score even more. And we actually have some sites that are as high as an A rating. So if we work on it, we can really improve that. Unfortunately, out of the box, most of these frameworks don't give you very good results. So you have to actually work at it to optimize it. Um, so here's what Google PageSpeed comes back with. It comes back with
Okay.
a 16 out of 100. So that's
Oh, is
that's
that
pretty darn dismal.
okay?
um, what they do though is they give you some indications about what it is that you got dinged for. So this is kind of like your little grading from your
Okay.
homework paper where you stayed up
Okay.
late.
So
And
that's more helpful than just giving you they actually give you some tips for things that you can do.
yeah, well, they tell you what it is and they give you a little description. So like this is, but here's the thing.
Yeah.
A lot of this is written in developer speak.
I exactly. That is Greek
uh,
to me. So
So starting with the very first word, resources are blocking. What do you mean by resources? Well, a resource is something that is used to build a page, like an image or a JavaScript or some HTML code. So it's saying that, oh, there's something holding up the painting of your page. Now, more terminology, Google's first paint is kind of what it sounds like if you think about it. It's when you go to a website, you type in the URL and you hit return. What is the first thing you see? How long does that take? That's called the first paint.
oh,
And
okay.
it's saying 9 seconds. Well, that's absolutely abysmal. It should be 3 seconds. So that's what I mean
And
about,
3 seconds for the first paint, meaning there's
yeah,
not an expectation that your whole page is going to load in 3 seconds, but that people
no,
start to have an experience within three
yes,
seconds. Okay.
absolutely, exactly right. People like to see things because if
Sure.
they think something isn't loading, they think, oh, what's wrong with this thing? And then they click
Yeah.
return again and
Um,
submit. And then
right.
they get frustrated and go away to
Okay.
somebody else's site
We don't
that's just faster.
want to keep them there. Yeah.
So here's my rating. Not very good.
And this
Um,
we're back at the GT
this
metric.
is GT
Okay.
metrics, yeah. So I was
And
jumping back and
what's the
forth.
difference again? Can you
Well, the
remind me?
difference is Google runs their own tests, and they're similar to what GT metrics runs. GT metrics runs other tests. So if you see page speed here in the first tab, is actually Google's suite of tests.
Oh, okay.
Um,
So that's redundant to what we did in the.
Well, somewhat, I think, but the weird thing is you get slightly different results. So it's good to run them both.
Okay.
I don't know why you would, but Google has their ways of doing things.
Okay.
Uh, Y slow is another suite of tests, and you can see the results are slightly different,
Okay.
meaning the results are these things under recommendations are slightly different. If I click back and forth, you see they put different weights on different things. However, usually a number of things tend to flow to the top. Like we see that Minify JavaScript is high there. Minify CSS is high. Um, yep, see that's
The
also
things
Minify.
that are high are the things that are more important or more critical to manage.
Yeah, we would call that also easier to fix typically. We would call that low hanging fruit. We can get in there and do
Okay.
things like change some, well, for example, this expires header. It's what it's saying here is that all of these files don't have a time limit on it saying how old they need to be before they're refreshed. So what that means is every single time the browser hits the server, it serves the file, even though that particular file, I know as a developer, those files haven't changed for 4 years.
Okay.
So why not put an expiration that's like, hey, you don't have to reload this for a month.
Okay.
That way, if somebody comes back to your site, it reloads faster because the browser looks at the request and it says, oh, I've got that file. I don't have to download it. So it's much snappier. It's much
Okay.
faster.
Okay. So could we go to waterfall next? Is that one of the things you wanted to cover?
This shows the order that resources are loaded in. So you have the base page, and then you have some style sheets, and then a whole pile of JavaScript files, these ones that end with JS.
Okay.
That was one of the complaints, is that to minify JavaScript means to compress all of these JavaScripts and put them into one large file, because every single request takes milliseconds. That's what these little numbers are under
Okay.
timeline.
Okay.
So for example, this particular file, this prototype.js, took 546 milliseconds.
Okay.
That sounds fast, but when you have, um, 300 resources on a page, it all adds up. This other site that we looked at, um, this
Now
is a
this
much newer site. This is the one we improved on. This one
This
actually
is
is
not your site.
320.
This is a different, this is actually a
Y-
client site.
Yes, this one has 320 resources, and it's saying that we could minify all of this JavaScript. So look at that. These are all JavaScript files that are all individual files, and we can actually compress those down into one file and dramatically improve that sort of metric too.
Okay.
Now, how we would go about it, just real briefly, is as developers, we would go in here with Chrome developer tools, and we would take a look at errors that are happening. So there's a couple errors that are happening,
Uh-huh.
and we would figure out why that's happening and fix it.
Okay.
And then we would look at if there are images that are loading that we were dinged at as being that image is too big. We'd look at the image and we'd analyze the size and the width and the height and see if it's scaled and see if we could reduce that.
Okay, can I slow you down there? That looks like
Sure.
something that almost anyone can do, but where do they get the information helping them determine that the images are too big?
Well,
Don't need to know code to do that. So,
no, let's see. Here is one of the things. This particular site actually is pretty good at that
and
because
we're
I
on
got it.
GT metrics.
Yep, I'm on G2 metrics. I'm in this
Okay.
little thing that says serve scaled images.
Okay.
We got a B grade for that. So these images aren't really aren't they're not really
But
well.
you would
A lot of times what happens is the images are really huge. You know,
okay.
think about this. Somebody will take a picture with their iPhone and load it up, and that thing is 5 to 10 megabytes. Then they might shrink it down to, an inch across on a website. Well, that's a tremendous waste of bandwidth. So you would get dinged for that. But in this case, these images actually have already been reduced. So this particular image is only 600 pixels wide, which is pretty small.
But if anybody wanted to just kind of do a quick assessment of their own site and run this, the serve scaled images would kind of give them some sense of if images are what's bogging their site down. Is that
Yes,
okay?
yes. They would look at these results, and some of these things end users can't fix, but some are content issues like this picture we
Okay.
talked about. But other things require the intervention of either a developer or a DevOps, a server
Okay.
management person.
Okay.
So this enable compression is the kind of thing that a DevOps person would handle. Keep
Okay.
live is also something that a DevOps person would handle,
Okay.
and so is browser caching.
Oh,
But most of the other things are either content or development tasks.
okay.
And that's where we can help sort out, well, what do we do with this thing? How do we fix it?
All the extra time you have these days at home. When do we expect to see this get move up from a what did you have, a 16? Think we could get
16. Yeah.
we
Ooh.
push that up above 50, Eric?
Oh, I think I can do that. Yeah. Maybe
Well, if
some
you
weekend when I can't go climbing because the weather is bad out.
yeah, yeah, climbing's something you can still do though. You're lucky to have that as your hobby. Well, what we'll check back in with you though, and if you know when it gets up above 50, maybe you can tell us some of the things that you were able to do.
Sure. Be happy to.
Cool. The care and feeding of your website, it's always important, but now it's kind of rising in priority for a lot of folks, especially our e-commerce friends. So if you have questions about this, you can type it in the comments. We'll see if we can get you an answer, and we'll continue to do these webcasts because I, for one, learn a lot and I really enjoy it. And Eric is brilliant, so it's always fun to just have access to his brain. So thank you, and thanks, Eric. Do you want to say anything
Yep.
before we sign off?
Nope. That's all for me. Thank you very much.
All right, great. Thanks so much.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.